It's a special edition of PFTPM, our post-draft interview series with general managers throughout the National Football League. And joining us now, Super Bowl 54 champion, Brett Veach. Brett, welcome back. How are you, pal?
Mike, I'm doing good. Excited to be on and talk a little draft.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about one thing before we get to the draft, because it sets up the draft conversation. You're smack dab in the middle of this dynamic that we're seeing now in the NFL with receivers. Draft them, develop them and pay them, develop them and trade for them. There's all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing all of these transactions and all these different ways of pursuing receivers. I can't remember anything like this, where you have a position that is so plentiful each and every draft, but the best players are getting paid more than we've ever seen before, and it seems like the market's going up all the time, and teams are trading for veterans. I don't remember a time like this at any position in the 50 years I've been following the NFL.
Yeah, no, it was it's certainly a crazy dynamic, and I think we got certainly tipped off early on in free agency when you start to see the receiver deals come in. I think it's one of those situations where it's probably a case-by-case basis. I'm sure it has a lot to do with where teams are and the stress to win right now. And do you have a rookie under under contract, or do you have a veteran? And, someone asked me earlier about where we stand on that. And I think it's truly just a year-by-year basis. And, if your cap is in a situation where you're good now and you have some years that fall where you're in a position to be aggressive, I think teams will be aggressive. This year was just a different year for us in regards to where we were with our quarterback and some other players on the team. Now this may come full circle where in a couple of years from now, we're going out there and we're one of those teams, signing that big free agent wide receiver. But we liked where the draft was. And we thought that this was a point in time during this run here with Pat that we can take a step back and, get the resources and add receiver. And we did that with the Jujus and the MVSs and certainly Sky Moore there in the draft, but also use some of those resources to add to the defense. And we certainly wanted to get younger and deeper there too. So this was a scenario we just took a step back and we thought it'd be best for the team. And we went ahead and made that trade. And I think both teams will benefit from it.
Is it easier to make that trade of a Tyreek Hill because you had him as long as you did? You would have been into contract number 3. Some of these teams are now making the decisions to trade a receiver on contract 1 instead of giving contract 2. Is it easier to say, hey, we scratched the lottery ticket? I always use that metaphor for draft picks. We scratched the lottery ticket. It was a winner and we cashed it in. We got full use out of that player. We won a Super Bowl with that player. It's easier to move on now than if we had reached some sort of an impasse with him when he was trying to get his second contract, not his third contract.
Yes and no. I think on one end, to all the points you made, I think those are all true. It was a third contract, not a second contract. And, Father Time is undefeated in this league. Unless you're Tom Brady, I mean, you certainly have a certain endpoint. So to that degree, that was part of our in-depth conversations about the landscape of the NFL. And then, more specifically where we were as an organization. So yes, in that regard, but also it is tough when on the flip side, you have accomplished so much and, he's still playing at a high level and the rapport that he has with Travis and with Pat is special and is unique. So I think it goes both ways. I think it probably helped push the ball over the goal line, so to speak, to do this, but trades like that are never easy and they're always emotional. I mean, I know it's a business and everyone knows this from, people that are GMs and coaches and certainly players. I mean, at the end of the day, it's business, but it doesn't mean that you are totally void of emotional attachments. And he was certainly a player we had one with, and it was tough, but I think it was certainly the best thing for our organization.
One of the most amazing aspects of that entire experience was the fact that you were able to keep it so quiet. We didn't know anything about it until the morning it happened. And probably by the time word broke, a decision had been made that the Dolphins would be the destination. How did you keep it from becoming a big story, big news, big distraction? Then you start having media chime in, whether or not you should or shouldn't do it, and you have to worry about that. How did you keep it all quiet until the moment it was ready to go down?
Well, I think, I don't know if I can answer that specifically. I would throw a guess that the fact that we were in contract negotiations with him at the combine probably threw some teams off where they may hear something, but there was also a ton of reporting that we were working with Drew and we were trying to get something done. So I don't think there was a lot of time from the combine where we had some preliminary discussions that was kind of trending in one way, looked like maybe we can get something done, to, maybe the media and the teams with free agency starting. You have all that other news with the Devontae Adams trade and who's signing where and all that stuff going on at the same time. Well, while that was going on, it at the same time, what was going on was a shift in kind of our thinking and where this was going, but it probably just got lost in, due to the fact that free agency had just started and there was so much stuff out there with different players and different movements. I would probably say it had more to do with us trying to get something done and then just being fluid and being able to adapt and change our game plan as free agency started.
One way that Chris Sims has described your offense in recent years with Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill is the defense has to cover every blade of grass. Now, without Tyreek Hill, is the plan to force them to cover every blade of grass with someone else, or is it we don't need them to cover every blade of grass for our offense to work?
Yeah, I think that the cool thing about, what we have here is when you have a coach like Andy Reid and an offensive coordinator like Eric Bieniemy and Pat Mahomes, I think there's many ways to score points and many ways to move the football. And you've seen Coach do it over the years with different type of skill sets and different type of quarterbacks. He's had an advantage because no quarterback he's ever had is quite as gifted as Pat. But sporadically throughout the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've had many games without Tyreek and many games without Travis. And, now it's, that you could easily argue that it's a small sample size and it's only a few games and what have you. But we still, love the talent on this team. And we have guys that can run, McCole Hardman and MVS. And we're going to add a rookie here in Sky Moore. And then we have some size with Travis and with Juju. So I think that, on top of that, we also have a great offensive line. So I think there'll be many ways to score points. And I think Coach will never be short of creativity. I think our game plan will be much like it was and has been every year. And that's just find ways to get these guys in positions to win. And now listen, with Tyreek, it's a little easier. We just tell them to run. That's the way of winning. But with this guy, with these guys we have here, they may not be as fast, but we have a ton of talent. Our coaches will do a great job of just putting these guys in good positions to win. And, we're confident in the running game with Clyde and now adding Rojo. I think we'll be balanced. And, I think we're excited. And I think, the team's looking for, I think they're looking forward to the challenge of being a little bit different on offense and trying new things. And just like we've done the same thing with Tyreek and the RPO stuff, some of the defenses are now predictable and they're just dropping everybody. But I think it'll allow us to get a little bit more creative and utilize some different concepts.
You mentioned McCole Hardman. We met with him at the Super Bowl. He's a guy who's entering his contract year. How do you balance the temptation to wait and see what he does this year before you put a value on him for a second contract versus the idea that, the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to get? He has a big year. The market keeps going haywire. Where's the sweet spot from a timing standpoint for a guy like that?
It's a good question. I think one of the things that makes it more difficult is just where this receiver market went. So on one end, we can sit there and come up with something that makes sense for us and for him. But on the other end, when you come off a free agency period where these numbers were so high, and there's also the mindset or thought process of, the cap will only get bigger now. I think it'll probably tend to go in the direction where the agents and the players want to wait. And, if last year's any indication of where this thing's going to go, and well, at some point it will kind of flatline out and things will become more balanced in regards to getting stuff done ahead of time. But, we'll certainly have those type of conversations. But I think that if this offseason, tipped its hand, it's more on the lines of the agent and the player just saying, well, might as well just wait. A lot of players benefited from waiting. And I think until that flatlines and settles down, I think there'll be more of a desire for probably the agents more so to wait and play it out.
And it was a weird year to see how high up the salary cap went from the pandemic year to this season. Do you have an idea of where it's going the next few years? Do you try to predict and project, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we tried to. It's hard because we were a few years ago when we were doing our off-season deals a few years ago. We were hoping it was going to be at 215 to 218 this past season, and it settled at 208. I think there's a general mindset that we may have one more slower developing year next year, and then the year after that, you might see a bigger jump. So I think we're, again, I have no insider information, and we're just we're trying to play it safe and be smart with our contract so we don't get put in any crazy scenarios. But I think, our mindset and our best guess is maybe a moderate increase next year, and then when you talk about substantial gains, you're looking at maybe 24.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling, a guy you mentioned earlier, a free agent acquisition from Green Bay. The guy's got incredible measurables. The production didn't always match what you would expect it to do. And it's Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. Why do you think that he really hasn't had the kind of big numbers that maybe you would have expected given the offense he was in? And how central do you think he's going to be to what you guys do in the passing game this year?
Well, I think sometimes in those scenarios when you have great offenses, I think it's similar to maybe a McCole Hardman here or Sammy Watkins here. When you have those guys, your offense is really tough to stop. But at the same time, you're going to have a ton of production out of a Tyreek Hill and out of a Travis Kelce. There's only so many balls to go around, and certainly with Devontae Adams being there, and I know, the tight end there at Green Bay, he also had a lot of production. They've had a ton of weapons over the years. We've had a ton of weapons over the years. So I think the value in players like MVS and the Watkins and the McColls are really in, where the total offensive production ends at the end of the year. I mean, they're a reason why. I mean, if you don't have those guys, you certainly Travis and Tyreek will still get theirs and be productive. But when you have those guys, it just makes it all the more difficult to lose track of or to keep track of every single player. So I think their value falls more in line with the overall production of their offense. And, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would bet Green Bay's offense and Kansas City's offense have been up there at the top the last few years. And I think those players, although their stats may say that they're the direct reason, when you take a step back, they're a big reason. And, we saw that a little when Sammy left. I mean, we had some issues with some concepts just because Sammy maybe wasn't getting the ball, but he occupied things and it made it easier for Travis and made it easier for Tyreek. So I think those guys' values, it's a little bit misleading when you just look at the catch and yardage production. But I think when these guys sign somewhere, and it's not cheap, it's because I think teams and coaches see the role and the value. And if the opportunity presents itself, these guys make plays and do things. And McColl's the same way. I mean, McColl he hasn't been targeted a lot because he's around great players. So now hopefully this year he gets a chance to get more opportunities and make the most of them.
You made some noise on the first night of the draft, moving from 29 up to 21, cut the line in front of the Packers. Some idiots like me thought, hey, they're going to get a receiver. And then we realized, well, all the good receivers, at least for now, are gone. And you drafted a cornerback instead, which obviously it makes sense to have good cornerbacks when you've got so many great receivers around. But walk me through the mechanics and basically how long in advance are the seeds planted for that move that happens when the Patriots are on the clock at 21? Is the call made out of the blue there, or are there advance? And if so, how far in advance conversations about the possibility of making that jump?
We had talked about a couple of different scenarios, and we wanted, and I think I had mentioned this in my pre-draft presser. I didn't foresee just a monster move up where you're trading. You have all this equity, 2 1s, 2 2s, 2 3s. There's so much value in that. With these seasons are so long, and there is a battle of attrition, and you have to have a deep roster. We wanted to be selectively aggressive. We went through a few different game plans, and what we thought was what made sense for us was, in regards to adding to that defense, when we're sitting there at 29-30, we can make a small move. And we talked about that game plan on Monday. By Tuesday and Wednesdays, we were calling, I think, from the Eagles at 18, the Saints at 19, 20 with the Steelers, 21 New England, 22 the Packers, and so on. So we started at the 18. We really wanted to not have to do anything with 50 or 62. So we kind of looked at, all right, we do have 2 3s and 2 4s. So let's look at those combinations and where could that get us? And it probably will get us 21, 22, but hey, let's call these teams in front of us. And sure enough, New Orleans was receptive, but it had to involve 62, and we just wanted to play it by ear. We were motivated we wanted to address the corner position. We thought there were some teams like Tennessee and Buffalo that would go corner. We thought the DN group the numbers played in our favor, so that if we waited until 30, we just felt like there was numbers before and after that first round that would help us. Whereas corners, during our process, we had a couple guys and we thought it would be iffy if they would get to 29. So we were kind of committed to moving up to corner the whole time, had dialogue with all the teams. And, we ended up staying on 19 because we wanted to keep 62. Then the Eagles made the trade, and that kind of opened the door for us because I think they may have gone corner. But with them making the trade, we were able to double back with our conversation in New England and execute that. But it was really corner the whole time for us. And I think it kind of prompted Buffalo's move because then they moved up 2 spots to get the next corner. And I think had we just stayed there, I think both McDuffie and Elam were gone. And so that was, I think, a strategy that worked out in our favor.
It's got to be nerve-wracking. You've got these contingencies and these possibilities, and you decide, it almost sounds like a game show. Like, all right, we're not going to do the trade at 18. We'll see if he's still there at 19. Yeah. We're not going to do it at 19. We'll see if he's still there at 20. I mean, there's a lot of guesswork. I assume it's informed guesswork. It's experience. It's hunch. I don't know. Take me through what's going on inside you while you're waiting for these picks as you're hoping you can work something out where you eventually do spring up to get the guy you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just falling back on your board and the numbers on the board and looking at and like you said, Mike, it is nerve-wracking because you can sit there and you can feel 90% sure, but that really doesn't mean anything. All it takes is one team to do something out of the norm, and it affects everybody else's pick. I certainly think that if the Eagles stay there, McDuffie's off the board, but because they decide to trade for receiver, the whole board goes in different directions. But it's a combination of the numbers you have at those positions on the board, blended with what are perceived to be team needs and what they're going to do, combined with the likelihood of someone or some team making a trade. One thing that was obvious to us early on was we had hypotheticals with every team. The one team that was very reluctant to talk hypotheticals was Pittsburgh. And so that kind of, it just basically confirmed what you thought. Well, in this draft, you're going to have hypotheticals unless you want a quarterback. I think if, and so, you never know. There's a lot of buzz out there of them taking a quarterback, but you never know how these teams feel about a quarterback. But I think when we had talks with them prior to the draft and then right around pick 15 and 16, they were extremely non-committal to doing anything. So then we felt like, all right, this ain't going to be a corner here at 20. So we either, it's either 19 or 21. We're going to be okay. Well, I think the Eagles took the receiver there. So we had that window there where we felt like we had some room to operate because at the time calling those teams, we felt like we had a safe spot there at 20 that would be a quarterback.
The whole concept of moving up, obviously you guys made the big move 5 years ago to get Patrick Mahomes at number 10. And one of the things, I got product placement behind me in my book, Playmakers, we talk about how the Saints were ready to pull the trigger at number 11. Drew Brees was in the draft room. They had to go tell Drew, hey, we may be taking a quarterback here. I don't know if I've asked you this before. When you guys moved to 10, and there's a good chance I've asked you this before and I just don't remember, but when you moved to 10 that year, did you know the Saints were taking him at 11?
No, we didn't. But during that process, going into the draft, we knew that Buffalo was a team that was going to work with us. So entering the draft, we knew that, the highest we can get to is 10. We were just at the mercy of New Orleans and Arizona, both reported potential interest. I mean, it wouldn't have taken a lot to get from 11 to 9. So, it's one of the, now listen, the 5th-year option jumps once you get into 11, 12. So maybe there was an element of, all right, let's just roll the dice here and we'll save some on the 5th-year option at picks 11 and 12. Although in looking back, when you have a chance,
penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah. I can't definitively say that was their approach. You would have to think they genuinely thought that no one was coming up to 10. Because if you thought someone was coming up to 10, I don't think that a few bucks here on a 5th-year option was going to be enough of a risk to wait at 11. But again, it's like a lot of things in this profession. I mean, I mean, this sport is great. I mean, the parity is like none other, but at the end of the day, whether you're a great roster on paper or whether you have the most perfect draft plan, like there is an element of luck, and you have to have a little luck. Now, the more prepared you are, the more likely you are to be lucky. But you do need some teams to do things for you to take advantage of that work. And I think we were certainly lucky a few years ago, and hopefully as we look back in time, we were lucky this year.
Before I let you go, schedule's coming out May 12th. When it pops up on your phone or your laptop or your tablet or wherever, what's the first thing you're going to look at?
Vegas, because it's the best trip. I mean, there's nothing. They have. I mean, listen, everybody loves. I mean, first off, it's a conference rival, and they got a beautiful stadium, and it was electric there last year. All these games we play there are amazing, but I think everybody. And I think I spoke to you earlier about this. I don't get too much into the schedule. I wait for the phone calls because the families are calling to reserve games.
Right.
But
that's right.
Yeah. Inevitably, the first call I get now is, "Hey, what are you doing with your tickets in Vegas?" So that will be a calendar. Hopefully, it's a holiday weekend, because if it's a holiday weekend, then I won't have a lot of calls.
I assume, I mean, you guys are a big ticket team. You play a lot of primetime games. You play a lot of different days than Sundays games. Are you used to that distraction now where it's not a big deal? Because I assume most teams would just like to go ahead and line up at noon Central Time, every game, same routine, same everything. But all the different games have become part of your routine now.
Yeah. I think you do get used to it. It is tough. And, Coach and I talk about it all the time. I mean, playing so many night games, and the road night games are killers. It's a lot. And it seems like every year we're getting 6, 7, 8 of these night games. And, when you're on the road and you're playing in LA or in Vegas or in Arizona and San Francisco, and then by the time you get back, it's 3, 4 in the morning. And then all of a sudden, guys are in for treatment a few hours later. I mean, it's a lot. I'm with you though. I think when the schedule comes out, we certainly look for the primetime games. And then the games that are most exciting are the games that are the 12 o'clock noon kickoffs, especially on the road. Now, the problem is once you get past whatever mark that is, we always seem to be getting flexed up to night games, or, so even when you do get the schedule and you feel like there's a pocket of games that are on the road, they're at 1 o'clock, and, you'll be back at a reasonable time. In the back of your mind, you're always like, well, this one's primed to be a flex game, and this will be a night game. So I think we've gotten used to it. Doesn't make it any easier. It's a lot of wear and tear on our guys, but they've been able to adjust and handle the primetime spotlight for sure.
You got your short week game early this year, right out of the gates. You've got the week 2 Thursday night game that kicks off the Amazon schedule. Do you like getting that quick turnaround early in the year when you guys are healthier, or would you rather it come, maybe later after you've had your bye week or something like that?
No, I hadn't thought about that, but I mean, my gut would tell me that I think earlier you'd like it. I think with the preseason now, and it's taken a step back, you'll have the opener, but I think for the most part, the guys won't hit that kind of, every team hits a lull like in November and December, and they have to take a step back and recharge before the playoffs. So I think having that Thursday game with, certainly most of our guys not playing much the last preseason game at all, they will have a game, and whether it's home or away, it'll probably be a road game. I'm guessing, I have no idea, but you come back, and if you're going to play a Thursday game, to your point, I think having it early and then having it at home, I think is a good deal.
Well, Brett, I'll let you get back to work. I appreciate your time as always. Congratulations on another great draft, and we look forward to talking to you again down the road real soon.
Awesome, Mike. Always great to catch up with you.
Thank you, Brett.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.